First 2011 LIDNUG event, and of course we're starting pretty impressive. This time around here we have John Papa tonight, which you're all here to talk to and chat to. Before I quickly introduce John in detail, just going to do some housekeeping. Of course, I want to thank all our sponsors, Orgsweb, LIDNUG, and Typemog. Charlie is giving away one ultimate collection for .NET and one ebook. The ebook is the Pro, I forgot the name of it. It's an ebook, and we will be handing it out at some stage. Also the Typemog isolator from Typemog, and we're also giving away 5 Typemog t-shirts to the runner-ups. And thanks to our sponsors for sponsoring the John Papa event. We have another event coming this January, and that's Scott Guthrie Talk Shop number 8, and that's on Monday the 21st of January at 3 p.m. Pacific time. We also have another confirmed event, which is Bertrand Leroy. He's going to give us a tour around the Orchard project. Now, Orchard is a MVC3 CMS open source system that a group of very talented people has been putting together over the last year and a half. Orchard project also the 5th most downloaded project on Copex at the moment, and considering it hasn't been in full release for more than a week, that's quite impressive. And he's on the 21st of March and is going to give us a tour around that. This tour will be a technical tour, so that'll be rather interesting. Of course, typically our links to the LIDNUG group, our official website, LIDNUG.org, where you can also find our recordings. The calendars for subscribing to our events. If you are not on LIDNUG, we will of course be sending out more announcements via LinkedIn as they come up. Follow us on Twitter, twitter.com/LIDNUG, and of course Facebook as well. If you have any questions for any of us on the management team or about LIDNUG in general, feel free to send an email to info@lidnug.org. And of course, thanks for turning up from Invar, Charles, myself, Sane, Peter, Isaac, and Acid. So, I'm going to hit over now and introduce John Papa. John is a senior Silverlight evangelist from Microsoft. He's also a former MVP, a Silverlight MVP, and a frequent speaker from Anita. He also has written is about 9 or 10 books, I believe, and he also runs the Silverlight TV on Channel 9, which is silverlight.tv. You can get hold of John on johnpapa.net or follow him on Twitter on John_Papa. Anyways, John, thank you very much for taking time in the new year to come and have a chat with us.
I guess it helps if I unmute my microphone, huh?
That's true. Was it 9 or 10 books you've authored, John?
I think it's now 10. I co-authored some, so some of them I haven't done on my own. I've got one coming out. I think it's going to be in March on Windows Phone 7 with Jaime Rodriguez and Yohai Kiriati, who are co-workers of mine on the Windows Phone and evangelism team.
Fantastic. Look forward to hearing that one, or seeing that one when it comes out. You said it is going to be out in when?
I believe it's going to be in the March timeframe. There's the publishing industry is a very interesting industry. You never really know exactly how long it's going to take to get the books out. So I know they're done writing. I'm just not sure exactly when it's going to be published at this point.
Fantastic. Well, I'm going to leave it up to you, and I can see there's already questions in there, but this is your show, John. Take it away.
Cool. I wanted to say first thank you for having me to the user group and to the sponsors again, the Teller folks, Typemog folks, Orgsweb again. I've got some good friends at Orgsweb actually. In a former life, when I was a consultant, I did some consulting work for OrgSweb. Really, really good guys up there in the North Carolina area. So thanks for coming on. So we've got a good crowd here. Happy to take any and all questions that you guys have, and I see some cooling up in the queue already. But before we start out, I just wanted to do a quick poll. Some of you may see I created something here. Just to get an idea, this is my first virtual live meeting chat. It's not a strict presentation. I don't have anything prepared. If you would take just a quick second to fill out the poll, I'd appreciate it, just to get an idea of where is everybody from, see kind of what kind of reach we have here in general. And I think I've got the major continents. If anybody's from Antarctica, I will go ahead and apologize right now that I did not put it up there, because that would be kind of interesting to find out. All the major continents here for the poll. Pretty neat. And I guess I can vote. I'm from North America, so there we go. But neat. Wow, somebody from Africa too. Pretty cool. So this is a chat that Brian and I were talking about doing. I think we set this up about 2 or 3 months ago, and I wanted to kind of just answer some questions. And I see a couple of the ones I figured would show up right away. So I'll address some of those right now. First of all, there's a question up there about Silverlight with HTML5 from Ashish Kayla. Looking up in there, basically, I'm just going to answer some of these verbally. It'll be a little easier than me typing and trying to talk. So the question is basically, why is Microsoft shying away from Silverlight as a major development platform on the web and not just the phone? There's been a shift in the company strategy. And really what Ashish is getting at, I'm paraphrasing, is that there's, it seems like he's having a lot of clients who were keen on getting LOB apps delivered in SSL, and now they're shying away. So I think the best way to answer this is to get back to some blog posts that Scott Guthrie's put out, some comments. There is no shying away from Silverlight. Has there been a shift in strategy? I think, without putting words in people's mouths, I think in the blog post by Bob Muglia and Steve Ballmer kind of clarified what was said earlier. And you can go point at those up on the Microsoft.com/Silverlight website. Basically what they said was that, yeah, we've had a shift in strategy. We are now pushing with HTML5 as well, but originally we weren't going that direction. If you noticed, there wasn't a whole lot of HTML5 movement a year or 2 years ago with Microsoft. Now that's a major player as well, so there are more options. The way I look at it is, originally there was a lot going on with Silverlight, and Silverlight was kind of the de facto choice that everybody was pushing, including myself. But now with HTML5, there's other options. So in certain scenarios, like breadth across multiple devices, for example, iPhone. You want to do something on the iPhone, you can't do Silverlight on the iPhone. So HTML5 is an option that we're looking into, and all these different platform devices. What's this mean? It means that Silverlight's not the end-all, be-all that's going to be in every single device in every place. Would I love it to be that case? Sure. I think a lot of us would love to have one technology that does that. But I don't think it's fair to say any technology is going to be in every single place, at least not at this day and age. So is it why? The question is, why are we shying away from Silverlight? No, we're not shying away from Silverlight. There's just other options at this point that are being considered. And Windows Phone obviously is a big player for Silverlight. The Silverlight business applications, premium media applications. If you saw at the Firestarter, we're really committed to having a lot of new features coming out as well. So we got a couple questions about HTML5. Again, I'm trying to just read a couple of these at the same time. Is HTML5 more adoptable than Silverlight in the future? It's a good question. Adoptable. So HTML5, right, it looks like the current plan is HTML5 is going to solve World 100. You know, as we all know, when XML came out, that was kind of the bid for that as well. Is HTML5 great? Yeah. Is the idea of HTML5 really the reality? That's where I get a little fuzzy on it. So it's not just HTML5. It's CSS. It's all the it's jQuery. It's all the browser support for it. There's no real standard set yet for it, although there's obviously what's being discussed across the 3WC org. But that all said, I got to think that HTML5 is it's kind of the soup du jour these days. Everybody wants to use it. They all want to support it. Is it going to be more adoptable in Silverlight in the future? I think if you're doing cross-platform devices, these different tablets and slates and iPads and mobile devices and whatever else we may think of these days, maybe watch phones. You never know, you never know what's going to be coming up. I think you're going to see HTML5 having a better breadth of reach in those kind of places. But as far as depth, the way I look at it is, Silverlight is a plugin, just like Flash. And plugins generally, the way I've always looked at it is the plugins can do things that browsers can't do today. So that's the value in a plugin. Browsers have to support HTML and CSS and all these other features that take longer to adopt and take longer to make standards out of. The plugins can go ahead and they can create and push the envelope and get things in there faster and have a deeper integration. So the plugin's job is always to stay ahead of the curve and do things a little bit faster. So that's kind of how I look at the two. Cool. Let's keep going down here through some of the questions. And I'll go on to the main slide again, so you don't have to look at that poll anymore. When will the Silverlight 4 subset be available for Windows Phone development? I think what Brent's getting at here is that there are some features in Silverlight 4 that are not in Windows Phone, and there's some features in Windows Phone that are not in Silverlight 4. What happened is at some point, like with any technology, you have to start branching code just to make sure you can meet your deadlines. And the Silverlight 4 and Windows Phone 7 code base is primarily the same. There are a couple of variations based upon things that the phone can do, like accelerometer support and camera support and other device support, things like that. And then there's things that, and there's controls that are specific to the phone as well. And then again, on Silverlight Desktop, there are features that are available that are not available on the phone. These features, in some cases, helped each other out. I know the Silverlight team is working at combining the two sets of features and adding things to Windows Phone that weren't there that are in Silverlight 4 and vice versa as they move along. For example, one great example of that is there's a lot of performance improvements made in the Silverlight when they created Windows Phone because of the smaller device, smaller processor, all that. And some of those features have made it over into Silverlight already, and some of them are being brought in Silverlight 5. So, is there a time frame or set where it's going to be answered, where we're going to have exactly one code base? No, I don't really know the answer to that, but I know that that's the direction is we're going to do that. So let me answer an easy one. Where are you originally living? Where am I living now? I'm originally from New York, upstate New York, capital, Albany actually, or as people from Albany call it, Smallbany. So it's a good area, liked it a lot of good family up there. My family's of Italian descent, so there's quite a big Italian community up there, and got a lot of family still in New York and in Albany. Eventually got tired of the cold. It gets pretty cold there. I moved down to Florida, lived there for a couple of years, and thought I was going to stay there forever until Microsoft offered me this position, and then we picked up the family and moved out to Seattle. So right now I live in the Seattle area, right near Microsoft's campus, which is it's a beautiful area. It's a beautiful area. I like some easy questions once in a while. That's nice. So reading through here, kind of picking off ones that I can answer quickly. Are there any thoughts around or news around Moonlight? Nothing that I'm aware of at this point. I believe the last I heard of Moonlight, and again, this is not a Microsoft project, it's external, was that they were working on skipping Silverlight 3 and going right to Silverlight 4. I do not know what the current status with that one is, though. Is there going to be a convergence of WPF in Silverlight? There is. Actually, I had a good meeting with Rob Relier, I think it was 2 days ago, and Pete Brown, who are both really, really big WPF and client advocates. Rob is actually on the WPF team. He's one of the leaders of that team. And if you haven't seen his WPF session from PDC, you should definitely go check that out, the PDC 10 session. And what we were talking about is there's a lot of the features that are coming out in the next version of WPF, which he announced at PDC there, are features that were in Silverlight already or kind of get some more parity. And Silverlight's bringing a lot of features over from WPF too. So if you looked at the Firestarter keynote, there were a lot of features that we talked about, such as relative source ancestor level bindings. And then there's the custom markup extensions and a bunch of other features that we had that we're starting to pull over, binding and style setters. Is it going to be one code base? No, but there's a lot of features we're pulling over. And one of the biggest reasons I would tell people in the past to use WPF over Silverlight was if you have a project that needed to access something like on USB ports or low-level hardware or Win32 APIs, those kind of things were best handled through WPF. You had a lot of integration. But now with the p-invoke support that we've talked about at the Firestarter for Silverlight 5, you can do Windows and Silverlight, starting Silverlight 5 as well. So the reasons for using it are getting smaller and the convergence is getting tighter. Is it the same code base? No, of course not, but it's definitely moving in that good direction. Okay, here, let's see. So starting back at the top, do I ever think that Silverlight would be bundled with IE? This is, again, I'm no legal expert, I'm no lawyer. I do not think that Silverlight would be bundled with IE. I assume it has something to do with the legal issues with IE from 5, 10, 15 years ago, where I think Microsoft had some problems with IE being bundled with the OS. So bundling our products with IE, I don't know if that would work. Although one of the first things I said when I got here was, hey, let's just put Flash in there and we'll put IE, we'll put Flash and Silverlight together with IE and we'll be set to go. But I think people kind of just chuckled at me and because I have no idea what the legal ramifications are. So I have no idea. Do I think it'll be bundled? No, I don't think so. How do I feel about the ability of Silverlight to become a viable tablet application development platform? There's a lot of cool Silverlight applications that I've seen come out at CES, and I had the privilege of being involved in a couple of those in advance. There was a really cool Flickr one, a USA Today one, really, really cool applications, and I've seen a couple others as well. And these applications are all done with Silverlight on the Windows 7 tablets. Quite frankly, they kind of blew me away with how great they were. So do I think it becomes viable? I think it depends more on how accepted the tablets become in the industry. You know, if people buy your devices, then I think Silverlight's a great choice for them. I think there's great space for HTML5 there as well. The touch features in Silverlight version HTML5 are, again, pushing the envelope a little bit because it's plugin. So they're a little bit more robust at this point. And obviously in the tablets you need those kind of touch and gesture type features. So do I see them becoming a viable choice for tablet applications? Yeah, I really do. But I think it depends upon what happens with the tablets or the slates or whatever kind of devices and the hardware comes out. A lot of it has to do with those hardware choices. Cool. I spoke with you at Dev Connections. Hey, cool, thanks. I love Dev Connections. I'm actually going to Dev Connections again in Orlando. And I'm reading this question. You mentioned you had a really good simple example of a project to implement MVVM. That's the starting point. Can you tell us where that solution is? And do I use Caliburn, Micro, or other frameworks? So, a couple of good questions here. Do I have a project I can throw you at right now? No, I do have some that I'm working on. I'm working with a couple of folks that are building some MVVM applications that we can use for samples. I'm also, I thought I was going to write a book on MVVM and just get it out there, but I just couldn't find a publisher that was going to do kind of what I wanted to get the book out. So I'm actually considering just doing a series of like 20 blog posts that talk about it. So keep an eye out on that. I'm definitely going to get the content out. And if, at worst case, I'll do something at Nix that kind of walks through it. But this leads me to my poll question that I have here. I've got a poll up here for what MVVM framework do you use? Assuming you've heard of MVVM, if you don't mind chiming in with this. Which framework do you use? And I didn't list every one of them up here, but do I use Caliburn Micro? I do not use Caliburn Micro. I have looked at it. I'll be very honest, I didn't like Caliburn. There's two frameworks that Rob Eisenberg and his team has created. One's called Caliburn, one's Caliburn Micro. Caliburn is a much larger, more involved framework. Caliburn Micro is a much smaller, much more nimbly created framework, and I like that a lot better. So Caliburn Micro is very good. I believe that the AlphaJax program in Windows 7 actually used it. There's a lot of projects that use Caliburn Micro. It's been very successful. Rob's a brilliant guy. He's done a lot of great work. I guess the big thing here is with MVVM, a lot of people kind of get scared off, in my opinion, on where do you start, what framework do you use, and it almost becomes, MVVM becomes this discussion of what do I need to do to get started in MVVM and what actually is MVVM. And I think a lot of folks get caught up in thinking MVVM is this big monstrosity of you have to use this framework, you've got to use messengers and event aggregators, and you've got to use these behaviors over here, and it really has nothing to do with all those other tools. You can do MVVM without any frameworks, period. You can have MVVM very, very simply. These frameworks and tools help you with MVVM. So one of the things I've been trying to do is show people how you can use and create with MVVM without doing frameworks, just to show you kind of what the basics are and what the real fundamentals in MVVM are. And then going beyond that, how do you solve problems, additional problems, with these tools and frameworks that core MVVM doesn't solve on its own? Because MVVM is just a pattern. It's like any pattern that you use. And it's a good pattern. It's good for separation. And I've got a whole, I won't go off my soapbox too far, but I've got a whole session at the Firestarter on this and at PDCE. And I did another one yesterday for the UK Tech Days, which is recorded. So if you go to UK Tech Days, they've got that session as well. But my general feeling is, first of all, understand what MVVM is. Figure out what is it really. And it's really just the separation of the model, the view, and the view model. It has nothing to do with commands and behaviors and everything else. Those things help you with MVVM, but they're not part of it. Once you get beyond that, and I see here there's quite a distribution, which is what I expected in the poll. We've got about a third of the people don't use MVVM, and we've got about 70% who use some kind of framework or tool set. Looks like MVVM Lite is the most predominant that we've got here. And we got Prism, something else, maybe Cinch or Jounce, or maybe you rolled your own MVVM framework, or maybe you don't use one, but you still do MVVM. This is good information here, actually. But the key here is understanding that something like Prism or Caliburn, those are what I call frameworks for MVVM. They are really built for people who understand what MVVM is, but they need something to help them implement the pattern and solve the problems more easily for them. So there's things that are built into those frameworks that help you solve problems, and you don't necessarily need to know how they're solving them, but they solve them for you, which is great if that's what you need. I mean, those are awesome things. And Prism 4 is out. Carl Shiflett did a great session on that at that UK Tech Days yesterday as well. So if you want to see that, definitely read up on Carl Shiflett. Caliburn Micro is another great framework. Looks like only 2 people here are using it, but I can definitely poke into that. The difference there is between those and something like MVVM Lite is that MVVM Lite is a set of tools. So MVVM Lite is not a good piece of software, I should say. I don't want to call it a framework because it's not a framework. I would not recommend MVVM Lite to somebody who doesn't really understand MVVM and needs something to help them actually implement it. That's what Prism or Caliburn Micro can kind of help you move along. MVVM Lite is great for, I know what MVVM is, and I'm going to do it on my own here, just create the models and views and view models. When I run into things like, I need to know how to, I need a view model base class. MVVM Lite has one that you can just use right out of the box, and it gives you the source code. Or you need to be able to bind a behavior from some kind of a mouse click event in the middle of a panel, something that doesn't have a command for it. MVVM Lite helps you. So you have to have some kind of understanding of MVVM first to use MVVM Lite. What do I use? Point blank, I use MVVM Lite. So I went on a little bit about MVVM only because I'm pretty passionate about patterns. I've done MVC, MVP, MVVM. I'm very passionate about patterns, and I think they're very, very helpful. But I first recommend people understand what is MVVM, what problems does it solve, do you even need it? And to me, it kind of helps to see if you compare a project with MVVM versus without, kind of what you'd be doing differently. So cool. So let me move over to some more questions again. And let's just look at some of these MVVM ones. Do I think there's too many MVVM frameworks out there? Cause people to shy away from them? I don't know if there's too many, but I think there's too much misinformation. So I definitely see your point, Ian. Yes, I think it definitely is a scary topic. And instead of adding to it with new frameworks, what I've tried to do is just talk about the existing ones because there's plenty of good stuff out there already. Looking at Doug Lewis's question here, I've heard several explanations of MVVM that clearly explain separation between the view and the view model. And scrolling here. But the separation between the view model and the model are always much fuzzier. Where do you draw the line between the two? Simply put, the model is the data, and you can include like validation in there too. And the view model is the presentation logic. So for me, What I do is I have the view model have references to one or more models that aggregate that data. So think of a view. You might need to have like book information on more than one view. Well, there's probably a book model. You don't want to relate the model directly to the screen because then you have no logic that you can deal with. That's where the view model comes into play. And if you have more than one screen, the view model can aggregate book data with maybe customer data, like a library application. But on another screen, maybe you just want book data with price information. So you might aggregate different models in view models. That's one purpose for a view model. Also, going to get your data, to me, that's the view model's job. And I have the view model go off and call what I call a service, a data service that goes and gets the data and fills the models up. So to me, the model is simply just the data and perhaps any validation that you may have on that particular data. But the model has no idea where the data comes from, and the model has no idea what it's being used for, which is how I always talk about it. So I'll try to hit a few more of these MVVM ones here since we're on that topic, and then we'll come back. From Dimitri, does Prism v4 bring the full Prism framework of features to Windows Phone 7 developers? You know, I know we're talking about that. I have a couple meetings with the Patterns and Practices team at Microsoft who creates Prism, and I know they're talking about that. I'm not sure of the exact answer there, and that's a good one that at the end of this chat, I'll definitely take that one with me. I got to look into that. I do not believe there's anything for it right now, but I know there is something in the works to help out with patterns with Windows Phone 7. I'm actually on a small committee that helps advise for that. If you have any suggestions, Dimitri, I know you've written a lot of Windows Phone 7 apps. If you have any suggestions, please, by all means, shoot me an email. Or for those who don't know my email, it's john.papa@microsoft.com. Please don't spam me, but john.papa@microsoft.com. If you have any questions, you can always feel free to contact me. Honestly, the best way to get hold of me is on Twitter, at John_Papa. Any plans from Dion, any plans for MS to include MVVM framework in future .NET versions? I wouldn't rule it out, but I wouldn't rule it in either. I'm kind of against having MVVM baked into the product at this point, but I've seen the successes with like ASP.NET MVC. And so that's why I kind of think, you know, maybe there's a way I'm not looking at this that would help. My hesitation for it is I've seen too many people try to force others into MVVM patterns, specific ones, and that's usually where people fail. If you try to force it down one particular path, that's a problem because there's so many ways to do MVVM correctly. There's not just one right way. So if we can find a way to do it which allows flexibility, I think that'd be a great thing to do. How different is MVVM from MVC, which is what I use? Well, not to sound too sarcastic on this, but MVVM and MVC are very similar. They're 2/3 similar. The models and the views are almost identical because, again, your models are your data in both. Your views are your screens, your presentation in both. The difference is in MVC, you've got a controller which handles all the presentation logic for you for getting the data from the models up to the views and talking to your services. In MVVM, the view model does that too, but the big difference is the reason you use MVVM, one of the reasons you use it instead of MVC, for example, with WPF and Silverlight, is the XAML data binding. Because of the way the views are built in WPF and Silverlight, you can implement data binding directly and declaratively. And with a controller, you're pushing and pulling data. With a view model, you're just handling bindings. It's more of a passive approach that just happens implicitly. So if you know MVC, it's relatively easy to get over MVVM. My path of learning was I learned MVC and then I went to MVP, Model View Presenter. And Model View Presenter is very, very similar to Model View View Model. So that's a path I took. Uh-oh, I feel bad here for Joe Bacco. He says he recently attended a talk by Ward Bell. I feel bad for you. No, Ward's a very, very close friend of mine and a good guy. We tease each other quite a bit. He attended a talk by Ward on designing with data in Blend. One takeaway that bothered me is that it seems to require introducing markup or code into production solely to support the design tool. Do you know if the teams are taking steps to remove that? So yeah, here's a quick background on that. Again, if you see my talk at the Firestarter or PDC about doing design time data, you can kind of understand what Joe's getting at here. Is there any way to use design time data without involving any of the code in to support the tools? Nothing great that I've seen so far, to be honest with you. Is there work being done behind the scenes of the tooling teams to help that? Yes, there is. Is it a major priority? No, because there's ways right now that you can get around it without involving too much muck, too much design time code in your own applications. The way I do it, and you'll see that in the Firestarter video that I did with the NVVM, is I create design time classes to support my mock data. And I don't have a problem with that because I use those mock data classes for unit tests anyway. So I need my mock data classes to do it. The problem I had for a while was there's a lot of patterns out there with NVVM where people were saying, if it's design time, do this. If it's runtime, do that. Use different data. And they were doing that in every single view model. So if you had 100 view models, they were doing this in 100 places. And that really bothered me, to have to sit there and in my code have this if-then statement in 100 places. So what I've done is I've come up with a way, actually talking with Ward Bell, to create a way to just do it in one place. So I have one spot in my entire application which says, if it's design time, load all my design data. If it's runtime, load all my runtime data. And I've been very happy with the way I've come up with doing that and the results that I've had in projects. That's part of what I want to talk about in what I was proposing for a book. I'll probably just do it in a blog series instead. And interestingly enough, Ward Bell was one of the people who didn't really like the whole design time data thing until probably last summer. Ward, to his credit, one of the reasons they get along with him so well is he has his opinions like we all do, but one of the great things he did was he listens about other people's opinions and kind of talked about design time data quite a bit with a bunch of us, and I think he started seeing that there's a lot of value in it. His hesitancy with design time data was the same as mine. And the same thing as the question we have here, is that why do you need to do all this muck in the code to get there? And short answer is the tooling going to help with it in the future? I would be very positively thinking that the tooling would. I can't guarantee it will, but I'm definitely trying to sway my influence to help it do that. And if it doesn't, we'll come up with ways that make it better, just like we are. Cool. Let's see here. Can you talk about a good resource for quickly getting up and running with Meth from Patrick? The best resources I've seen, quite frankly, are from Mike Talty. He did them, I think, last January and February. He did like a 6 or 7 part series on Meth. A great set of videos from Mike Talty. He's an evangelist in the UK. Another great series is a Silverlight TV series I did with both Glenn Block and Hamilton Verissimo. Both of those guys who happened to work in the Meth team at the time. They did a couple of videos with me as well on using Meth. So both Mike's series and then the Silverlight TV series are both good Meth resources. Can you point to a comprehensive information tutorial on using Meth, NVVM, and Silverlight together? Mike's got some good stuff on that. I don't think Glenn has posted any of his stuff, although I know he's worked on it. So Mike Talty's a good one. Another one is Dan Wallin. Dan Wallin has done some Meth and NVVM together as well. I kind of hesitate on this one a little bit because I'm not convinced that Meth and NVVM should be used together. And kind of the place that people most point to it is using like the view model with Meth to kind of inject things into the view model instead of using dependency injection. I think it's fine. I haven't had the success with it that I would have liked to support it, but it's definitely a good option. Dan Wallin, another very good friend of mine, he's got some blog posts on it, so definitely check his stuff out. Cool. I'm kind of just reading through the questions here, going through. Brian Henderson has a question. Man, this guy's always got questions. What is the story of Silverlight on Windows Phone versus Silverlight plugin and feature-wise? Currently, SL on WP7 is version 3 plus, and current plugin is 4. Yeah, we talked about this a little bit in the beginning, so I'll just rehash it real quick. There's going to be features in both Silverlight and Windows Phone that are going to kind of cross over, and as both push the envelope, one of our goals is to kind of merge some of the features into both feature sets and both code bases. But is there going to be a complete parity? My gut is no, but it's going to be close, and it's definitely going to help each other out. So let's start back at the top. How do you feel or foresee the ability of Silverlight to become a viable tablet? I think we talked about that. I think it's going to be a good tablet option, depending upon how the tablets do. I'll go to the second one here is, assuming SL is still being positioned as a platform for a line of business, which it is, what is the story for keyboard accelerators? Interesting. I don't know. We're having a hard time convincing users to learn a new set of primary functions, new records, save, etc. So having like Alt N, for example, to do new. I don't know. I know I had this question recently, and I'd have to look back in my archive to see kind of where we're heading with that. Can you do it with Silverlight? Yes, you absolutely can. And there's some great kiosk applications for it too. But honestly, I don't have a great answer for that right now. Let me look into that. Feel free to email me or tweet me that, and I can look into it. Here, are there any technicalities with certain WPF features like your donors are missing from SL? No, it's not technical. It's more just, you know, how much time and effort. It's a lot of just money and resources and time, honestly. Why is there no reason why some of these features aren't in SL? Well, one of the big reasons we don't have some of the features in Silverlight is that we have a lot of, we have a very large runtime with WPF because we use the full .NET framework. So there's some things that some of those features use that are in the full .NET framework that just can't be done in Silverlight unless we increase the framework size. That's one reason that they're there. Another one is the code bases might be very different for the two. Another one's time and money. So there's just different fit reasons. Just like having no relative source ancestor binding wasn't in there until Silverlight 5. So I don't believe there's any technical reasons why some of these things aren't there. I'm sure that some of them may be technically difficult, but you know, it's just not. It's not the only reason. Let's put it that way. For a given project, can you discuss when to use WCF data services, better known as Astoria, as compared to using RIA services? I'll even throw one more on you. What about not using either one of them and just using WCF directly, or using SOAP, or using REST, or using POX? I actually wrote a book, Silverlight 2 with data services, that talks about some of these different options. And the question here is, you know that RIA services is a layer on top of WCF, is more tightly coupled. Actually, both of them are on top of WCF. So WCF data services, which uses REST, APIs to do queries, is on top of WCF, and so is WCF RIA services. They both use WCF under the covers, which is nice since it's they're not being built separately in isolation. Can I discuss which is a better option? Honestly, that's probably a really good session to have. I generally tend to kind of compare those two with using neither because those are three good options that you have. RIA services is great for getting it out of the box. It handles a lot of the plumbing for you. It handles the most for you. Data services I find great when you need REST, when you need to hit queries over HTTP. You have a data model, you need to expose it. You don't have complex business rules. You do have some business rules, you don't have complex ones. WCF data services is good. If you have more complex stuff, RIA services is better, in my opinion, suited for something like that. And if you already have a model with WCF services in place, honestly, I don't know if I'd change to use one of those two in an existing application. But for starting from scratch, there's definitely reasons to use all three. I believe Sean Wildermuth has put a blog post up on this topic, actually last summer, so I would definitely go look at what he has to say. He's a fellow data guy like me, and he has a very good opinion on those. So Brian Madsen, you got a question. Hey, you can have a question. You're from this user group. I'll answer it anyway. So which features of Silverlight do you feel is the turning point? The turning point for Silverlight taking off? For me, to be very honest with you, I didn't even look at Silverlight much until Silverlight 2. Silverlight 1, not having .NET, not having controls, I was like, you kidding me? And this is, maybe I shouldn't say that, being Silverlight evangelist, but I really didn't have the interest. But with Silverlight 2, knowing that now I could do web programming without having to do AJAX and HTML and DHTML and JavaScript and just keep going on in the list, and all the issues that came with that, kind of a mess in my opinion. Knowing I could use .NET and I had real controls, so basically just apply my WinForm skills to the web, that to me was huge. So to me, that was the turning point for Silverlight when the sharp incline happened. Obviously with HTML5 and with jQuery and all that, things have gotten a lot better in the web world than they were 3-4 years ago when all this started with Silverlight, but that was the big turning point for me. Is there a good source for moving from old .NET WinForm applications to Silverlight? Yes. The first resource I would do is I had Dan Wallin create a video and a lab that says, how do you go from WinForms to Silverlight? And it's up on the Silverlight.net website. And I think I actually had a link open because I was hoping somebody would ask that. But I will find that link. It's up on the Silverlight.net website. We actually released a series of training that at the Firestarter that kind of went along with the videos that we had. And in those training sets, we had, in that training, we had a series of, I think, 11 labs. And yep, I've got the link here. I'm going to try to just post it up there. I wonder if I can share it in a text in this content. See if I can do that. There you go. So here's the link. I put it up there in the live meeting for the training content. And you can see in there, migrating from Windows Forms application to Silverlight from Dan Wallin. How is Silverlight 4 and WCF RIA tied up? I'm not sure I completely understand the question. RIA service is something you can use with Silverlight, but it's not part of Silverlight. So maybe if you can expand on it a little bit, I can get back to that. So let's see here. Next question. Is there going to be a XAML code analysis tool like FXCop? I've actually talked with a lot of the guys who write those kind of tools, and they're very interested in doing that. So if you're interested in that, definitely talk to those third-party analysis tools companies and give them your opinions on it. I don't want to give away any other details, but it's a great area for third-party markets. Is there a plan for Windows Pad 7 using Silverlight the same way Windows Phone 7 does? Windows Pad 7, I assume it means like the tablets using Silverlight. There's not going to be like a special brand of Silverlight for it that I'm aware of in any way, but that's really going to be something that's part of main Silverlight. So yeah, Brian, I was at Brian Henderson here. Can you post the links? Is the answer in the QA? Actually, that question disappeared before I could post it, so I'll ask Brian to see if he can put that link in the answer up there. I'll make Brian do the work for me. And I think he's doing a good job answering these as we go along.
I'll try.
So how many internal tools and apps use at Microsoft that you said, hey, we should release that? There's been several, actually, some pretty cool ones. There's also been some that honestly were great functionality-wise but looked horrible. So I think that's a detriment to releasing some of them. Just like any app, you create something to help out with. But there's been some pretty cool stuff. I've seen a lot of research projects that have been here, which have never seen the light of day, and maybe someday they will, which are really, really cool stuff. It's one of the best parts about working here. Is there any chance we're going to see Silverlight on Android? It would really help to sell the SL story. I agree, it would. Is there any chance? There's always a chance. Is it my call? No, unfortunately. So that's about all I have to say on that topic at this point. Joe McBride got a surprise in the mail. Thanks, John. Okay, cool. I'm not sure what your surprise is, Joe, but I can guess, so I'll leave it at that. When can we expect to see the beta of Silverlight 5? I think Scott Guthrie said sometime this year. He might have been more specific at the Firestarter. I can't really comment more on that. You did see some things of Silverlight 5 at the Firestarter, and you will see more this year. It's something I've been working on myself. So what do you prefer to use for dependency injection with MVVM if not Meth? Unity? No, I use neither actually. Dependency injection, you don't need to use Unity or Ninject or Meth to do it. I actually don't use either to do DI. And one of the reasons I do that is because I found that Meth and Unity and Ninject, while I grokked them, when I was teaching them, it was something that was just adding to the pain of learning MVVM. People were just struggling with it. So I tried really hard to find a way to do dependency injection without using those and not lose a whole lot. And some of the examples I put up there in the Firestarter and PDC kind of show how I do it. What's the story on Windows 8 and Silverlight? Any chance it might be bundled? I'm not going to address any questions on the future of Windows at this point. If RIA services are set up on the same machine as SQL Server where the data is coming from, does the service talk directly? I gotta see, it's a long question. Service talk directly to a database as opposed to going out on the network to hit the database? Using its IP or fully qualified domain name, is there a way to force talk directly to the database without going to the network? I don't know the answer to that. I'm not sure why that would matter a whole lot as far as speed goes. I've never really seen a performance issue if the services are on the same machine as the database server to go there. But that'd be maybe a good question for offline, Patrick. I'd be happy to follow up with that. Are you going to see reservice support for Windows Phone from Jeff Young? So I asked you a question back, Jeff. Why do you want it? Reservices does a lot for you on the client side with changing data, change tracking, authentication, authorization, a lot of things like that. It's not there now, I'm assuming, because there's APIs that aren't on Windows Phone 7's client that are there in the that aren't there on the phone. But the other side is do you really need to have all that change tracking and whatnot in a fully baked LB app on a Windows phone? Is all that really necessary? And if so, I think there's other ways to get around it with a phone app. A great person to ask on that would be, though, is Depeche Manani. He's somebody I've talked quite a bit, or Jeff Handley on the Reasserters team. They both have blogs up there, which we can point you to. I'll do a blog post when we're done with this as well, kind of talk about it. But honestly, I don't think Reasserters support on Windows Phone 7. It should be a priority. So I personally don't agree there, even though I do like both platforms. Would you suggest any Silverlight object-oriented databases for really open source? The best one I've used so far, honestly, is going to be the Sterling database by one of our Silverlight MVPs, Jeremy Lickness. Done a great job on there. Is it a full-blown database if I put it through the ringers? No, I haven't, but I think it's a good one. It's called Sterling, and it's by Jeremy Lickness. Let's see here. Let me take a quick drink. Start from the bottom here. What is the one thing you feel Silverlight should not be used for? How about doing surgery on you if you have back problems? That's a good place for it. Back in the early days, when Flash was in the bee's knees and every man... yeah, I see what you're saying here, Brian. It seems like every time a technology comes out, everybody uses that technology to solve everything, which can be a major problem. I have a quick anecdote of a friend of mine who, many years ago, I showed him how to use stored procedures and views on separate occasions. And then I came back, I went away for work for a couple of days, came back, and he was all excited because he showed me he wrote everything in our code base into stored procedures and views. And took everything out of .NET. And he was all proud of himself. And I was like, yeah, you did it, and you can do that. But just because you can do it doesn't mean you should. There's a time and place to use every technology. So what do I feel is the thing that Silverlight should not be used for? If you're going to do a really immersive cross-platform consumer-based application, something like you're seeing the Pirates Love Daisies application that we put out on HTML5 on Channel 9, that is, to me, completely suited for some HTML5 and not Silverlight. All right, Dan Wallin. Oh, yeah, he must have heard his name. Ears are ringing a little bit. What's your best bowling score in Connect Sports? I refuse to answer that question, Dan, because I think all three of my little girls have beat me horribly at that. And in fact, I challenge Dan next time he's at my house and he happens to be in Redmond to actually play my daughters in Connect. So I think he's coming here from the MVP Summit. Maybe I'll have to invite you up for that and have you play my 5-year-old daughter. So let's see here, Dylan Mason. Which industry sectors are the highest demand for SL application development? I don't have any official numbers on who's using it, but I see a ton of it, both before I got to Microsoft and now in Microsoft, in the financial, the manufacturing, the medical, healthcare, insurance, a lot of the manufacturing applications too, which kind of surprised me originally. So a lot of those big industries, the standard line of business, large enterprise apps, ISVs using it quite a bit as well. Do I see a demand shift? I don't think so. I think, those LOB type areas, there's probably more than I'm thinking of, really, those enterprise ones are really a good place for it, and they fit really well. We don't talk about all of them because some of them, for example, if Company X has an internal application using Silverlight, they may not want to share and show the world the whole application if they're using it internally. So those are the ones you don't see all the time, but there's definitely some major ones out there that I've worked on before and after and during meeting at Microsoft. And of course, the premium media side is a good one too. So, phone's ringing. Sorry about that, fellas. Let's see here. Can you give me your email address again for Patrick? Nope, that was it. I can only give it once. Sorry. No, just kidding. Let me try to put that up there. Let's see. I'm unable to type my email address in here for some reason. Maybe, Brian, you could put that in there. It's john.papa@microsoft.com. All right.
Yeah, I'll do it.
Okay, cool. I'm glad I'm entertaining you, Brian.
Cheeky.
So let's start back at the top again.
Sorry for the cheekiness.
Can you explain isolated data storage? Ooh. Probably not in like 5 minutes, but let me give you the quickest example of ISO store that I can. This is from Yogesh. So isolated storage is basically, with Silverlight, both Windows Phone 7 and I'll call it classic Silverlight, you can store data locally in files. So that's basically, see Brian's answer. Sorry. I see so isolated storage. You can store data in files, and Silverlight lets you do that. ISO store is basically an API that Silverlight has, isolated data storage, which allows you to write to files in a more controlled way. So you can store data like, let's say you had a list of states that you always had a populated combo box with in Silverlight, and you wanted to store that locally on a machine. You could load those states or countries up into a list, store that in isolated storage, so you don't have to keep going and calling a WCF data service to get those. But that's kind of the quickest way to talk about ISO store. It's not a full-blown database in any way. The database I talked about earlier is Sterling, that was written by, it's an open source one written by Jeremy Lickness. It actually is a database on top of isolated storage. Dave B, what portion of the SL4 toolkit will come with SL5, and will there be an SL5 toolkit with the beta? That's two questions, Dave. Sorry. No. So, which portion of the toolkit will come with SL5? You know, I haven't looked into that yet. Basically, the way the toolkit works, it's a way for us to create controls out of band, meaning we don't have to hold up the Silverlight timeframes to create controls. So I'm not sure what portion will be in there, if any. It's not really a consideration we have, other than occasionally something like the view box will move over. I believe early on something like the combo box was there. Well, maybe often. No, it was the preview. Sorry, the preview was there. So it moved over to the core product. So it's not something we kind of have a plan for. It's more just when it becomes baked, when it becomes fully tested and really widely used. Will it be a toolkit with the beta Silverlight 5? There'll still be a toolkit for sure. I'm not sure if we'll be adding anything to it. It really depends upon if we see a hole or a gap that we can fill with the toolkit. But yeah, I love the toolkits. Those are great. Any movements with Microsoft F# and Silverlight? I am not aware of any, but I haven't been on the lookout for it either, Josh, so I can't really answer that. Rick Rapp, Surface V2, and I'll tell you right now, I'm not a huge Surface guy. I don't know a whole lot about it. Pete Brown's a good one to talk to there. There's parity between multi-touch between Windows 7 and Touch. Is you're going to be similar parity with Silverlight, like inertia manipulations. Can't really be specific. I can give you my guesses on that, but I prefer not to because I'm not really sure of the answer there. Bob Miner, any recommendations on using Silverlight versus ASP.NET? Is there a set of guidelines somewhere that Microsoft has published? I don't think there's a set of guidelines that we have. A lot of it to me, and Dan Wallane and I are good folks to talk to about this. I know we've both done quite a bit on both sides. They really, they're both great platforms. To me, it looks, a lot of it has to do with what your company's trying to do, where are they trying to deploy to, what skill sets do your developers have. Yeah, I look at those kind of things as well as what the platform can do. So I don't think it's an easy question to answer, and I don't know if there's any guidelines, but that might be a good blog post hint for somebody like Dan Wallane to write. I'll push it off onto him since he asked me a question about bowling. So why doesn't Microsoft make SL open source? I have no idea. So if you port it to other devices by other orgs, I have no idea. Good question. I assume because we don't make everything open source, but I really don't know, honestly. That's a good idea, though. Which industry sector has the highest demand for SL application? I think we answered that. Financial, yep. We have manufacturing, health, medical. In financial, I would include, banking as well as investments and whatnot. Brian Henderson. FYI, Scott Guthrie officially announced Silverlight 5 and outlined its new features. Yes, he did. Thank you, Brian. That's a good link for the Firestarter. Also, his blog post talks about them. You will see coming out in the next couple of months, you'll see a more robust and complete list of what's going to be Silverlight 5 coming from me and from Tim Hewer. So I would look out as well there once we get the official OKs to kind of talk more about it. Ken, is it possible to use a certificate to sign a SL assembly for out-of-browser apps? Yes, you can. You can basically do Zap signing for out-of-browser apps. Zap is easy enough to sign the assembly. Oh, the DLL itself. Interesting. Not the DLL itself, no, but you can do Zap signing. So I misunderstood at first. Kind of whizzing through some of these questions here. What's your favorite testing tool? Silverlight, NUnit, Silverlight test projects. For Silverlight, my favorite one is the Silverlight unit testing framework that Jeff Wilcox kind of pioneered at Microsoft. That's my favorite one there. And I do like NUnit though. I've used that quite a bit in the past. Do you think that any mapper has a place in MAVM, mapping a server entity to a presentation model? You know, I go back and forth on this one. Mappers are interesting. So, honestly, I'm kind of torn. I love ORMs, so those I definitely would use. But having something that maps your entities to other things in general, especially if you're using like data transfer objects, I'm not sure if that's something I would do. But yeah, I'm going to kind of abstain from answering that one, to be honest with you. I'm undecided. Rumor is you'll be the next ripped wireframe model for Silverlight 5 3D. Yeah, I don't think so. I think my days of being ripped are about 20 years in the past. But that was pretty cool, wasn't it? I think Dave's referring to the Silverlight 5 3D model of Scott Guthrie that we showed at the Firestarter. That was pretty darn cool. Was that actually Scott? I do not know. I am happy to say I've never seen Scott without his shirt on. It's not something I strived to do when I got here. Although I think he did say that it did look quite a bit like him. Just teasing, by the way. I have a very dry sense of humor, if it hasn't come across. So, Tom, is there a mobile story when we insist on SL on the desktop but need a mobile option for the future? A lot of enterprise customers are insisting on this. For example, iPad. Typical answer is you shouldn't really go to iPad-specific app. How do you reassure your code is going to be reused? HTML5 will not solve these problems, is what he's saying. You know, I think the reality is, and I think we all kind of get this, is that there isn't going to be, at least today, there is no write your code once and run in multiple places. No, not multiple, but everywhere, I should say. So is there some kind of good answer we can give enterprise customers that says it will make them feel happy that they've written an application with technology X and it will run on the desktop, on the iPad, on the Android, on their shoelaces? No, there isn't, honestly. The reality is that you're going to have to try to do as much code reuse as you can, like server components, services. That's why patterns are really good, so you can abstract out different things. But there is no great answer there. And I found that with a lot of enterprise customers, most of them understand it when you sit down and talk to them about that, about the surface of this, and kind of why that isn't the case. But there isn't, there's no great way to kind of have that discussion because there is no, it sounds like from the media that HTML5 will solve everything, but we all know that's not the truth. It doesn't matter what the technology is. There is no technology that is going to solve every problem in the world. There just isn't one. And I hope someday there is. So Tom, yep, I got that one there, okay. Hi, John, thanks for your time. Hey, thank you, Ryan, for coming. UI performance is important, and Silverlight display performance is sluggish. Is it? Scrolling is not smooth in some cases. Yep, I'd agree. Any news on when Silverlight Perf is going to be addressed? We address Perf in every version, actually, and it's gotten a lot better over from 2 to 3 and 3 to 4, and even 4 to 5. There are some tools that we have, and a lot of times the Silverlight Perf issues can be addressed by using the Perf tools, finding out simple ways to fix it. For example, in the Silverlight Firestarter, I gave the bookshelf application with a specific bug in it on purpose. So the Perf team, which is Mike Cook and Joseph Goldberg, so they could actually show how the bookshelf application had a Perf bug in it that they could detect and then fix rather easily and make the application go a lot faster. And that bug in there, I'll make you watch the video to get the details on it. That bug was basically in the way that I was embedding an effect in an area that was causing it to redraw like all the time. So what I would suggest there basically is that yes, we are both addressing Perf in every version and bringing some things over from Windows Phone 7 that have helped out too, actually. And then the other thing is the Perf tools. I would definitely watch the Perf video from the Firestarter, and I did a follow-up video with Mike Cook on Silverlight TV last week. I believe that's Silverlight TV episode 57, I think it was, that we did it for. So definitely check those out. Nathan Allen, it seems that all these data access framework choices are couched as purely preferential. You and many that you know are frustrated by many competing frameworks Microsoft produces. Yes. Have you heard this complaint much? Yes, and I complain about it too. And do you see him as doing anything perhaps to be better about it? So yeah, I do. Honestly, I'm actually more positive about the future now than I was before. and give you an idea of this, I was a data guy for many, many, many years, and I still am. So in the past, here's some great examples to kind of follow up on Nathan's. You had the Entity Framework and handling to SQL, developed by different teams at Microsoft, from what I understand. And both of those were a big problem because they both had to solve great problems, but they didn't really overlap each other real well as far as the code bases, so they couldn't merge them, which caused a problem. And you have to tell people which one do you use. Then you've got other issues where you have like RIA services, and you have WCF data services, and you have plain WCF. Now, the reason I'm more optimistic about the future is those teams, while writing them separately, kind of saw that, you know what, we've got a problem here. We've got 3 different ways to access data. We need to kind of merge these and get the best of all worlds on it, which is why those products are all renamed and built on top of WCF. So that story is getting better. I think Microsoft's learning in some cases to do that. But is it ever going to be a problem again? I'm sure it will be. It's a big company. A lot of things happen. Best choices, honestly, it might be a good blog post or a video to put together on data access choices, honestly. Maybe I should do that. So let's see here. Have I tried Silverlight native extensions? That's a good one. No, I have not. Though it looks pretty cool. And I think it's by Gosh. Pretty cool stuff. It allows you to do things kind of go beyond the envelope of Silverlight. So let's start from the bottom here. Any support loading multiple versions of the same DLL in Silverlight? I am not aware of any at this time, Shri. Brian Madison, outside of geeky stuff, what are you particularly passionate about? This is a family-friendly show. Brian, are you drinking over there, Brian? Jeez. What am I passionate about? I've got a lot of passions. I really like sports. Football, soccer, baseball. Lots of different sports. I play a lot. I watch a lot. My family, number one thing. I spent a ton of time with my family. I was a consultant for many, many years, and the biggest reason I did it was because I enjoy working with new technologies, but more importantly, I enjoyed the freedom it gives me to work from home occasionally, or spend more time with my family, or take them with me on conferences. Occasionally, you'll see a bunch of little kids in the stroller and my beautiful wife with me at a conference. So I'm really passionate about spending time with the family, and I put them right up there with my work stuff, which is why a lot of times I don't get to as many things as I should and I work crazy hours. But, when we're all dead in the grave, I'm never going to look back and say, hey, I wanted to spend more time with my family, because that's the thing I do the most of. It's important. Other things I'm passionate about, honestly, are talks like this, meeting folks in conferences. If you're going to Mix, please look me up, have a chat with me. If you're going to go to the MVP Summit, I'll be there hanging out as well. If you're going to be at Dev Connections in Orlando in March, I'll be there. I'm actually presenting with Dan Wallin at a Silverlight Bootcamp, and I've got 2 other sessions. I really love talking to folks, and it doesn't have to be technical. I enjoy talking about anything. Met some of my best friends through this career. So from Todd, John, you should come down and we'll run the Disney Marathon next January. No, I don't think so. I can't run that far. I get bored, honestly. It's never been an athletic thing. It's been more of a, once I get past about 5 miles, my mind wanders, and I just can't do it anymore. Will I be at NBC this year? No, I will not be. I believe I'm at the Netherlands Developer Conference. No, I will not be there, unfortunately. What will it take to get me down under for Microsoft Tech Ed? I think you're talking about Australia, Brian. I actually tried to get there this year, but it turned out, for some reason I couldn't, because I went to China in August for a couple trips, and then I went to New Zealand for New Zealand Tech Ed. So I spoke there. And in between was Australia Tech Ed, but it just turned out for some reason I couldn't go, which seemed kind of odd because it's kind of on the way. Not really, but when you're traveling 10,000 miles, it's not a bad option. What about Tech Ed South Africa? That would actually be fun. That'd be kind of cool. Maybe I could get on a plane with Hanselman. I know he likes to go there too. I like to get around a little bit, but the travel becomes part of an issue because of the family, obviously. But I really like to get around. I'm hoping to get to Europe sometime this summer too. I haven't been to Europe in many years, and there's a lot of great conferences. And unfortunately, the timing is always bad. There was one at the end of April this year, which was like a week after Mix, though. I just couldn't do Dev Connections Mix, and then a third one right away. Cool. So, NBC Cup, it's in June. Cool. Yeah, you know what? I have, if you know the conference of organizers for NBC, that's something I would consider. I'm not sure who they are, but I would definitely consider that if it's June. It's a good time frame. A good time frame for me is the June or August area, because there's less going on in the summer at Microsoft. Kind of just selectively picking some here. Has a performance tool tester for SL been released? I don't know if officially it's been released. This is from Chuan Tang. I'm not sure if it's been officially released. I know you can use it if it's in Visual Studio Ultimate. I'm not sure what other versions it may or may not be in, but you definitely can use it today, yes. And if you for some reason can't find it, email me or tweet me and I will help you find it. I guess there it is, NDC 2011. Oh, it's Norway, not Netherlands. Gotcha. Yeah, let me look into that, because that would be fun. I'd like to get over there for something and kind of do like a multiple country tour in Europe. Actually talking to Dan Wallin is looking at doing a trip to Europe too in June for a couple conferences. So we're kind of both looking around and seeing what's going on. So let's see here. Can I please share some thoughts on integrating Silverlight with SOA if possible? Yeah, I mean, basically service-oriented architecture with Silverlight, it works pretty well. I mean, because Silverlight needs services. So I'm not really sure. It's kind of an open question. I'm not really sure what you're getting at specifically, but I think it's something that's a good option to look into. If you could change one thing about Microsoft, what would it be and why? Just one thing, huh? I'm full of opinions, so do I enjoy being at Microsoft? Absolutely. There's some great things here. I don't know what the one thing would be. Let me just pick something off. It's probably not the most important, but one thing about Microsoft I don't like is there's some corporate policies that stop me from doing little things that would be very important. Like, for example, if I want to get internal folks, like for example, I'm trying to get internal folks to come here. If I want to fly Mike Falty here to do a presentation with me, that's very difficult to do because we've got different categories and whatnot of money that have to be allocated. It becomes difficult. And I was picking Mike's name out of the hat as an example. But I could I could pay a vendor to do it. Assuming I had the budget, I can use that budget to fly a vendor. But it's hard to do with an internal employee. If I want to get that person, I think they're the best choice. So those kind of things are frustrating. I completely understand why they're there. I mean, there's legal reasons and financial reasons, but it's the big corporate atmosphere that sometimes, which is frustrating, but it's also very valuable because it's so big and there's so many aspects. There's a lot of times I'm looking at it going, wow, there's things that I can do at Microsoft that I couldn't do at any other place. And that's probably the biggest reason I came here. It is the biggest reason. There's an impact that I can have on the industry here at Microsoft through this vehicle that I could not do on my own. And that's the thing I appreciate the most in meeting so many awesome people both in and outside. Okay, so are there any other open source Silverlight toolkits besides the SLF Toolkit and Coplex? There used to be a great one. Oh gosh, the name's escaping me. Cohen Zwickstra and Paige Brooks wrote two separate ones. And if Brian Henderson's still on, maybe he can post the link, because I know he probably knows the name of it. It's going to escape me right now, but yes, there were a couple of them up there that had things like color pickers and other tools that were kind of nice. Blacklight was another one that was around. Gosh, the names escape me, the other one though. I'll think of it though and either tweet it or blog it or something. And Brian, if you're on here still, I know you know it, so please put it up there in the answers. Brian Henderson, that is. So how would you decide to use Silverlight versus ASPX controls? Again, it depends upon if you're using, I assume you're talking about if you've got an ASPX application, and then you want to decide if it's going to be Silverlight area on your screen or ASPX control. If you need it to be really, really rich, then I think that Silverlight is a much better option in that case. But mixing technologies is always, there's an additional maintenance and head cost to it. But I don't know. Honestly, if you're having a site that's all ASP.NET, I'm not sure how much I would do with mixing those technologies. But I'm a big fan of doing the whole Silverlight side of it. So Wayne Richmond, can you give some results of your MVVM poll, your thoughts and preferences? Yeah, I gave a lot of my thoughts and preferences. I thought I did share the poll, but I guess I didn't click the button right. Let me do that. Share results. Where is the button? Show poll results. There we go. So here was the poll results for the MVVM frameworks. I hope you all can see that there now. The MVVM Lite was 31%. I don't use MVVM was 32%. And then there were a couple others like Prism at 14, something else, which is interesting. I'd be curious to see what those other things are. besides the 3 that I put up there. My preference is NVIDIA Light, to be very blunt. I also use Prism occasionally on larger projects where I've got teams that kind of need that help that Prism gives them. Although Caliper Micro has become a very viable option that I would consider as well. It really depends on the team. A lot of times I go into shops where the team has already got a good NVM background. If they do, then I kind of point them at the NVM Lite because it just helps them out with some tools. If they need something to do it all for them, then I would point them at Prism or Caliper Micro. If you're doing Windows Phone 7 apps, I would look at NVM Lite or Caliper Micro in that case, not Prism. How would you describe the current state of how marketable Silverlight skills on the resume these days? What's your favorite Silverlight interview question? Interesting. I think my favorite Silverlight interview question was the one I got from Dan Lane today, but what's my Connect bowling score? I don't know where that came from. So, is Silverlight marketable? Yeah, absolutely. I got to tell you, I still get phone calls from when I had to make a resume when I came to Microsoft, which I hadn't done in many years, and I had to make it because I had officially applied with the channel. So when I put that resume out there, I also happened to give it to my current contracting company, which I was going through, and I still get phone calls from them, 3 years later here, asking for, from all around the country, asking for different server-related jobs and opportunities. I get them from LinkedIn. I get stuff from when my resume was out there 10 years ago. That it's crazy. The Silverlight opportunities are really big, and I rarely get people emailing me saying, "Hey, I'm a Silverlight developer and I need a job. Can you help me find one?" When I do get those, usually pretty quickly they find one. So Silverlight is definitely in demand. There's definitely places to. It's slowed down a little bit, I think, only because more developers have come into it. But it's definitely in demand, and it's doing pretty well. A lot of Silverlight developers that I know have actually chosen the contracting route so that they can do multiple projects. Joe McBride, thank you. Yes, silverlightcontrib.coplex.com. That's exactly what I was talking about. Silverlightcontrib.coplex.com is the website with good third-party controls. Thank you. And Paige Brook and Cohen Zwickster were 2 of the guys who helped with that. So jumping around here. Jeremiah read the copy. Hey, I know you, Jeremiah. I am using a Mac and Silverlight apps. I'm sorry. Just kidding. Quince runs faster in Windows VM than native on a Mac. How is my Mac going to address the Mac runtime? I don't know. I wasn't aware that that would be a problem. That's curious, though. That's something maybe offline you could shoot me an email, Jeremiah, and we could take a look. If you've got an app that runs faster on Mac versus Windows, I'd love to see it. Maybe we could run it by our perf team and see what's going on. Shouldn't be the case, but it doesn't really surprise me. Different environments, you never know. So we've got about 10 minutes left. I'm happy to keep answering questions, and if I don't answer your question here, feel free to just tweet me, and I'll try to have a conversation on Twitter. I see some people already are doing that, and I'll get to those when we're done. Any future for support for selecting text like you can do in HTML pages? I know it's been a topic we've discussed. I can't really share if that's happening yet or not. I'm not sure what the story is there, but I know that's been a topic we've discussed quite a bit. I like the concept of COM being available. It's from Austin. But what are some typical or clever uses of this new native extension stuff? I haven't used it a whole lot, so I couldn't tell you too much, but I believe one of the uses of native extensions that JIT had was in helping doing encoding a video, for example. So if you wanted to do a live chat stream, I believe he incorporated some of that inside of it. Don't hold me to it, but I believe that's one of the uses he had. Definitely check out the Silverlight native extensions. There's some cool stuff in there. It's not an officially supported thing, but again, it's a nice little library. Let's bump down here. So we have Wayne Rickman. Oh yeah, the results of the MVM poll. Yep, I posted those up there. You guys can hear my phone ringing off the hook. Let's see here. How would you describe the current state for Chris? The current state, how marketable Silverlight skill as R1 these days? Yep, answered that. Very marketable. Do you think Silverlight could be the next desktop app platform with increasing OOB support and easy distribution? Yeah, I think it is in a lot of ways. I think it's great to use as a desktop app platform. Because somebody who's building a large desktop app platform today, and you've got, let's say, they're choosing between WinForms and WPF and Silverlight, my first choice would be to use Silverlight, unless there was a specific reason that Silverlight could not solve a problem that they had that, like, WPF could. So, yeah, I think it could, and I think it is right now. So let's see, we're going back up. Make sure I didn't miss any of these. So we did Wayne's, we got VD, Thoughts and SOA, yep. We did Austin's on Com, Jeremiah's. I think we did Mobile Story, yep, we did that. Futures for Support Recycling Text. I think we answered them all except for Brian's here. So if you could give the LIDNUG members one piece of advice in getting started with Silverlight, what would it be? So this may not be the actual reality of it, but to me, the first thing you should do in getting involved with Silverlight, at least what I would do, is I would start subscribing to Silverlight Cream, which is a blog post that comes out every day from Dave Campbell. And the guy's done over 1,000 of them, which we had him on a Silverlight TV episode about a month ago to kind of honor what he's done. It's quite amazing. He scours all the blogs out there, just hundreds of them, and puts what he feels are usually like the 10 to 12 best ones each day, depending upon what draws his interest. And he does a great job of putting the best stuff up there. Definitely subscribe to that. As far as actual training goes, there's some great courses by folks like Sean Wildermuth, who's done some great stuff with Agile Train. There's some other great courses from other companies out there as well. There's some free stuff like the course that we have up on the Silverlight.net website. Yep, the link that Brian's put up there on the live meeting. That link up there is great for learning Silverlight, whether you're coming from ASP.NET or WinForms. Definitely look there. Another great blog to subscribe to is I kind of look at Jesse Liberty stuff. He's got some great introductory level Silverlight material. Whether you're coming from .NET or not, he's got some great stuff up there. I definitely check out Jesse's as far as learning Silverlight goes. My material on my blog, to be honest with you, I don't generally focus on the beginner side of learning Silverlight, and that's just my preference. But there's some people who do a great job with that. I know there's the SilverlightShow.com, which does a lot of good material for Silverlight as well. I'm not trying to throw too many things out there, but you know what? If you want training, like video training, I would go to the Silverlight.net website, tutorials. Look at the series that Corey Schumann and Dan Walling did with me. If you need in-person training, talk to like Sean Wildermuth or go to one of the training courses that are out there. Sean's is great. Sean is brilliant. Puts a lot of effort into that. And if you're looking for just reading material, which is the way I kind of learn a lot of it, I would definitely do Silverlight Cream because that's kind of a one-stop shop for learning almost everything. And then Jesse's posts are great for kind of getting up to speed. And then on the other side, if there's ever any topic that you really want to learn about, whether it's advanced or beginner, feel free to ping me or leave a comment on the Silverlight TV website. Because I'm always looking for new ideas of what to do videos on, and usually try to do a 15 to 20-minute video on some topics. Cool. So, John, thanks a lot for sure. Joe, no problem. Dion, seems like Silverlight's getting closer to WPF. Do you think they're competing with each other? Yeah, I think they already do compete in some cases. We get a lot of questions on which way we should go. Should it be WPF? Should it be Silverlight? Yeah, so I think there's already there. Another comment here about Pete Brown's books are good for starters. Yes, absolutely, good point. Pete Brown's got a fantastic book on Silverlight 4. If you haven't gotten it, you should definitely check it out. I don't get royalties for mentioning that, but Pete is brilliant. He's a good friend of mine, and he wrote a fantastic book. I think it's Silverlight 4 in action. So with all that, that's some good stuff, and I'll post up some other links here that I like to point to people to. Silverlight TV, little plug for my own stuff.
What? No hat for the mask? That really sounds like bank robbery.
We've got somebody who has their microphone off too on here. Sorry about that. And we've got JohnPapa.net, Silverlight TV, the Silverlight.net tutorial at the top are a good one. Silverlight Cream, yes, all good stuff. Pete Brown's website, Tim Hewer's website. These are the masters: Pete, Jesse, Tim, Jeremy, Dan, Laurent Bugnon, Sean Wildermuth, lots of these guys. They've done some great stuff. And again, if you have any topics you want to look into, yeah, Laurent's got a good book too. If any topics you want to look into or go deeper on, please let me know. Always looking for new content to kind of get out there and help with. On that note, I want to kind of just feel free to pester John. Great. On that note, I wanted to thank everybody for coming today. Good chat. I hope I answered all your questions as well as I can. Try to be as honest, straightforward as I can be with these things. If you just want to chat about anything or just grab a drink at Mix or MVP Summit or DevNet, just please look me up. Always looking to meet your folks and catch up with old friends. And Brian, with that, I guess I'll hand it back to you.
Fantastic, Don. That was excellent. Absolutely brilliant. Well, thank you very much, John. Before people head off, do remember that there is a ultimate collection for .NET worth nearly $2,000, an ebook, there's also a Typemark iSettle license and T-shirts. Please